Hello, everyone. Today I have Phillip Mouradkhanian, who is a third-year medical student at Western University of Health Sciences in Pomona, California. How are you doing, Phillip?
I'm good. How are you doing, Elon?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being here. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
All right. So, what really inspired you to get into medicine?
When I'm thinking back to that question, I think there's two main things that drew me into medicine. I'd say, you have your classic, I really enjoy caring for others since a young age, helping out people as much as I can, giving what I can give for my energy to others was really gratifying. But as I got a little older, started taking some biology classes, started, understanding the mechanics of, the world we live in and then the human body. I think that was another big drawing factor of, I want to understand how everything works. And one of the most complex things we have in this world is the human body itself. So I'd say those two things really drew me into medicine from a pretty young age.
Yeah. Something I like to ask when people say, like, I was drawn to medicine because I like the sciences and I like helping people, like typically when like you see online they're saying like, oh, I like science and I like helping people. What was the way that you kind of conveyed that in your personal statements when you were applying to medical school?
I think the personal statements are really there's a huge misconception when a lot of people write their personal statements, and I've had the opportunity to help a lot of people get into medical school with their personal statements, and I think one of the biggest things that people don't understand when they're writing their personal statement is that you're not trying to convey all of your achievements, what successes you've had, all that stuff. That should come naturally with the reader just reading what they're seeing in front of them. Instead, you're trying to convey, maturity, a sense of understanding, a sense of, you know, uh, understanding of where you are in your life and what you want to pursue. And for me, I personally chose the path of kind of writing a philosophy paper as my personal statement. There's about maybe a handful of questions in there, and it's me, exploring the idea of destiny and purpose in life. And sprinkled in there, there are a couple of my achievements, but I really believe that's what made the difference because my first cycle, my first go around, it was more of a these are my accomplishments. This is what I've done. This is why I want to go into medicine. And it kind of reads kind of like a bullet point list and a CV, but that's not what a personal statement's supposed to be. So instead, I cut out about three-fourths of my achievements and accomplishments, just left in what, is interesting and really conveys who I am as a unique individual. And other than that, explored, what I thought would be interesting to write about. And it worked. It got me several interviews. So again, I'd express that to any pre-med student or anybody applying to really any higher level position is, don't make your personal statement a CV. You got to look for, what makes you unique, number one, and two, convey maturity in your writing. Are you able to write something that captivates your audience and something that can make someone want to read the rest of it?
Yeah, that that's really, really good advice because I think a lot of people when they think about the question of why do I want to go into medicine, they think, okay, I've done a bunch of stuff and I that's in doing those things, I kind of figured it out. But it's on a deeper level than that because yeah, I can go like win the science fair, but that doesn't mean that I have to be a doctor. It's more about the mindset of it and the teachings you get from seeing patients and doing all of those things. That's a really excellent point. Um, how did you know that you wanted to rewrite your personal statement when it came to reapplying?
I was very fortunate to have some great mentors at the time that I didn't have on my first application cycle. And they recommended to me, hey, give this paper to anybody and see, when their eyes come off the paper and when feel like they don't want to keep reading, that should be a good tell. Um, Tell them to stop at any sentence and take the paper away and see if they want to continue reading it. um, it's really important to, write something that is enjoyable to read in the first place. And again, the medical school applications themselves, you got to remember, you're filling out page after page after page of all your personal achievements, all your volunteering hours, any research you have, all that stuff is already conveyed to these medical schools. So it's really a waste of space to use that in your personal statement and convey that in your personal statement. Rather, you should take the opposite stance of, trying to convey who you are as an individual, whatever that is. If you love cooking brownies, you should put that in your personal statement rather than, hey, this is what I did in my undergrad. This is, try to convey those really unique ties to yourself. One. Number two, you got to be able to write in an interesting way. So for me, I think there's a few points that I go through with medical students, which is formatting, how you space out your paragraphs, how you add transition statements, super important. And no filler words. Filler words are very easy to add in there, and those jargon words are really a tell of, this person is not mature enough to write something that's of substance. So I think those are two like really, really big points that I hit on with most medical students.
Yeah. One of my cousins who was applying to medical school, he was having trouble with his personal statement, and he realized that like he wanted to keep reading his own writing, and as he was going through the drafts, he was not getting bored of it. And that's how, in his mind, he was like, okay, I'm on the right track, because at the end of the day, I'm a human and you're a human, and there's going to be another human reading the paper. So if I'm entertaining you, this is what you were saying before. If I'm entertaining you, if I'm entertaining myself, then I must be doing something right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you kind of walk us through the timeline of when you were a pre-med to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I graduated high school kind of classically, no CHESP, no early graduation. So finished up just around 18 years old. And I started undergrad. And when I started undergrad, I kind of had an idea that I wanted to pursue medicine. And I cast a broad net, applied to a lot of the UCs, USC, and I got into a few of them. And the first thing I noticed when I went to, especially the UCs, when I went to their orientation days, my first questions on these tours, especially to the science departments, was, what do you guys do for pre-med students? Do you have any alliances with hospitals or medical schools? And whenever I would ask these questions, it was so shocking to me that, the UC system really doesn't do much for pre-med students. They don't have any alliances, obviously no like held seats in their medical schools. They didn't really offer much for me, and I was thinking, why would I sacrifice my time to live away from home when I can just go close to home? Financially it's easier, and just go to a Cal State, and that's what I did. I ended up going to Cal State LA. Um, maxed courses, max amount of units every single semester I could take. And it was, initially it was relatively easy, especially because I forgot to mention this. I went to community college first, Glendale Community, and their standard for STEM students was pretty high. So it was pretty easy making the transition to Cal State. And, after getting, all these straight A's, seeing what I'm liking, seeing what I'm enjoying, about my sophomore, junior year, I decided, okay, I need to buckle down, take an MCAT, and I need to start this application process. And I was just about, 20 years old at the time. So I took an MCAT. I want to say it was my fall semester of my junior year is when I took my first MCAT, and I read all of the Kaplan courses, all of the Pearson courses, and I'll tell you that was absolutely the wrong way as well. I was just doing content review over content review. Absolutely wrong. I should have started with practice questions and used that to guide my content review. You live and learn. So first MCAT wasn't the best. It was still over 500, but it wasn't enough that, it would carry me into these interviews. So my first application cycle, a combination of a low MCAT score with not the best personal statement, I didn't really get any interviews that piqued my interest. I could have made the choice and gone to Caribbean at that point, but I didn't. And unfortunately, I didn't choose to apply to DO schools my first time around because I hadn't met my mentor yet. Um, Fast forward a couple months, starting my senior year, I meet my mentor. He's also a DO, told me to apply to DO schools, educated me on what osteopathy really is, and explained to me that it's essentially what MDs are taught, but a little bit of an extra curriculum and understanding of human mechanics. So cast the net again with the new personal statement, another MCAT now under my belt with a higher score, and my senior year, I that application got me in, and I started then. God, my timeline is so when I look back at my undergrad, it's kind of like a fever dream. But yeah, I got in after that cycle, and it was, I think, mainly due to my personal statement, my improved MCAT, and my mentor, really. So timeline was just about that. My undergrad degree was a biology degree. Also, my sophomore year, when I realized I'm geared towards medical school, I got a phlebotomy license on the side. Did a little bit work with that, and other than that, I had no research, kind of going into this blind, no really aids of, medical students who were helping me out or guiding me, and just a really wise mentor who, to be all fair, was a 70-year-old doctor, so doesn't really understand how the application cycle works, but understands the basics of you need to have something that someone can read and really enjoy. You got to have these things refined. So I was really blessed in that sense to have him in my life.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about the importance of mentorship and how someone can go about finding a mentor and how to make the most of their time with their mentor?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most overlooked things by all pre-med students. They idolize research over this, and I think that's so wrong. Before you even choose to go into the medical field, you need to find a mentor. Just because you don't even know what line of work you're signing up for, what kind of sacrifice you're going to be going through for, a position you don't even understand. So number one, I would recommend, if you have your own physician with your family, whether that's your PCP or a specialty care doctor that you guys already have a connection with and you enjoy their company, absolutely reach out to them first. You know, um, it doesn't have to be formal. Reach out, say, hey, I'm consider going to medical school. Would you mind if I shadow you or if I scribe for you? And scribe is a really good exchange of, you're not wasting their time and they're not wasting your time, where you both have a mutual benefit from it. So offering to be a scribe is really, really helpful as far as reaching out towards mentors, but you need to cast a wide net again, because not all physicians are geared towards, guiding medical students, one, and not all physicians, want to spend that time. So you got to find somebody that's truly invested in you and truly has that passion. So I'd say if you're a sophomore pre-med and you're an undergrad still, you are just about at the timeline where you need to find that mentor. So cast a wide net, maybe reach out to 5 to 10 physicians, see which ones you really click with, and go with them. And once you find that good mentor and they're invested in you and in your own education, uh, they will reach out to you via email, text, regularly check on you. They will literally walk you through the park. So just finding that is very beneficial. And even if they don't walk you through the park, at least you get a perspective on what the medical education you're about to be entering and what the career path you're choosing looks like. So that's what I would say. Cast the wide net. Pick 5 to 10 mentors that you might already have a connection with or not, and go see how you click with them. See how you work with them, because not all people are gonna click with your personality. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that you and them don't have that vibe.
Yeah. And before I met my mentor, it was like I knew what I was going into because I have family in medicine, but I like my mind kind of opened up because, like my dad is a surgeon, so he's kind of He's got that surgeon mentality, and the only real doctors that I interacted with who were in like medicine were like my PCP, and like maybe one time I went to my like dermatologist. But having met my mentor, it's just a different mindset, and I really like enjoyed that. And if I had not met him, I think my whole pre-med trajectory would just be totally off. I mean, that's how I met you. So yeah. So I want to talk about, you said how you were taking max credits in undergrad in every semester. So I want to know how you kind of balance that with maybe a clinical experience or something else. Like, were you solely focused on school, or how did you balance that?
All right. So this is, maybe to a lot of undergrads going to come off as a little controversial. And I guess, in my undergrad experience was really, I was working number one, and I chose a job at the time. Postmates was paying really well. So I enjoyed driving. I enjoyed listening to books. So I would be able to listen to these philosophy books or whatever kind of book I wanted to enjoy while working, and then doing max units at the side, whether that was 18 to 21 credits that I could take at the same time, also taking winter and summer courses. I would do that. And, I remember distinctly there was one semester where I had OChem 2, a couple upper division bios, the last physics course. There was something else in there difficult, and it was something like 6 classes I was taking. And when I look back and I'm recalling like how was I able to do all this? Undergrad in a sense is really, really a different ball game compared to medical school. And back then, it wasn't like I was spending every single day studying for these classes. I would do minimal day before, or 2 days before an exam, flipping through PowerPoints and, grasping concepts and ideas and really excelling on tests. I was a good test taker, and the material came really easily to me, and that's not always the case for everyone. um, but I will tell you, when you get into medical school, that's the case for everybody in medical school. You're sitting now in a class of 200 to 400 people, where every single person in the class had an easy undergrad experience like yourself, where concepts came easily, minimal amount of studying, and they were able to do things on the side. But again, it's not like I naturally was able to do that. It started with, my freshman year where, trying to do as much as I can, add work, add family, add friends. Once you're able to, juggle a certain amount and still be low stress, then you can add another ball and juggle some more. So what I tell a lot of people when they're struggling with what they're having is, maybe remove something, get to a point of zero stress or minimal stress, and then add some more onto your plate. And you'll never understand your true limits and your true abilities unless you really push yourself to the limits. So while you're in undergrad, I would recommend to any pre-med student is, pushing yourself, see how many units you could do, see if you could have a job on the side, see if you could volunteer on the side, work with a mentor, help your family, be with your friends, and still keep that balance. So I think that's a really, really important point.
Yeah, especially when you said you don't know your limits unless you push them, right?
Mhm.
Like, how am I supposed to know I can take 25 units, or that's a ridiculous amount, but let's say like 20 units, if I don't ever try, So yeah, that's a really good tip, especially when you're going into medical school. Your limits are going to be pushed, and that's common knowledge. So building that discipline in undergrad is very important. Yeah, I would agree. So you also mentioned your MCAT process. Could you walk us through a little bit more of that?
Absolutely. And again, I think discipline is the best word, Um, and I apologize if you could hear my dog barking in the back. I could go silence him if that's an issue.
No, I don't hear it, so you're good.
Okay, perfect, perfect. But yeah, the as far as MCAT goes, it comes back to that word you use, discipline. Um, and it's not just brute force. Let me just read as much as I can, do as much content reviews as I can, because that's absolutely the wrong way. You're wasting a lot of your time. Let's say you understand your biochem really well. Why would you spend an extra, 5 hours of your day every single day reviewing biochem if you already understand that really well? And, I think starting with taking practice tests, doing practice questions is the way to go, because end of the day, it's a standardized test. There's only four answer choices. It's pretty easy to logic out answers if you understand, one, how the test goes, how to read quickly, how to skim quickly, and how to absorb content fast. So starting with, practice questions is always the way to go. From there, especially sites like UWorld, Amboss, etc., they will tell you, hey, these are the subjects that you're lacking on, and these are your strengths. So there you go. Now you know what to content review. You say, okay, my OChem sucks, or my cars sucks, and you spend more time on that. So it's much more efficient to do it that way. Otherwise, you really won't have enough time. But again, end of the day, it's four answer multiple choice. If you really get good at test taking, you can always narrow it down to two answers and you have a 50-50. And again, it comes with time and experience where you have a gut feeling and you feel a little bit better towards a certain question, or you can reason out, hey, between this 50-50, this answer choice feels better. But again, MCAT is looked at one of these most dreadful things. And I don't think it's because the test is necessarily difficult. I think it's because the test sucks as far as content. It has nothing to do with medicine. It has nothing to do with medicine at all. The only piece of it, to be fair, that has to do with medicine, the psych portion is pretty much medical school level psych, minus, the drugs and certain conditions. But what you're learning in MCAT is the same psych that you're going to be learning in a med school. Everything else, it's almost thrown out the window. It's literally thrown out the window. So, just as a precursor for any of you pre-med students that are going to be into medical school, your board exams for medical school, whether that's STEP for MDs or for DOs, it's going to be the COMLEX or level. But for myself, I chose to take both tests. I want to have, licensing with both. So when taking the STEP and the level, or the USMLE / the COMSE, these are questions that are really like, imagine your CARS paragraph, or your really long paragraph in your MCAT for every single question, and you have minimum, 5 to 6 answer choices. I've seen up to 11 answer choices on questions. So it's less of, hey, can we just, logic out this standardized test without knowing the information? It's more, you have to know your content. But for MCAT, again, it's kind of upside down. If you really learn how to be a good test taker, you learn how to weed out from 4 answer choices down to 2, and you learn how to read fast, get ahead, focus on where your content is lacking, you really can excel well. And again, I have 3 pre-med students I'm mentoring currently. And one of them, I told him to get off the content review and go strictly to UWorld. And he took his first practice test, and he achieved a 504 after, completing, I think, 75% of UWorld in a 2-month period. Now, that's something like the guy's putting 8 hours a day, every single day, being a professional student. That's discipline. And he achieved a score that, in all fairness, on his first practice test was as good as my best practice test. So he's really set to get that 510, 515, maybe even 520, that really will get you into almost any school if you come off as a decent, unique individual for this school. So I think really questions all day. Do those MCAT practice questions, get through your questions banks, and treat it like you're a professional student. Treat it like it's a job, because it is a job. And when you are practicing for MCAT and when you are gearing to take an MCAT, no longer, can you work? I recommend all students, stop working, focus on MCAT, just do MCAT, take it like it's a real job, because that's what it is. And getting used to the environment of what an MCAT feels like, it's a 7-hour test. When you take your practice test, take it like it's a real thing. have a mouse, because there's going to be a mouse, have no distractions, no phone, and take the breaks exactly how the MCAT takes the breaks. You're going to be set to succeed if you're, used to what the MCAT feels like and how it feels like. You're going to be able to succeed on day of when other people are panicking and not used to the environment of what an MCAT feels like.
Yeah, that mostly goes for any standardized test, even in in college or wherever. Would you also recommend that for like the step exams or the COMLEX or going beyond?
No, no. Step and COMLEX are a little bit different, even though they are standardized. The way, at least, Step and COMLEX like approaching questions very differently. Step likes testing students not on, you know, memorization knowledge. Almost every single question is something that you can't look up in a book. It is something that you have to think outside of the box, understand your fundamentals of medicine to be able to succeed at. While your say, the DO version of the test is more of, if you really understand your pharmacology well, you really understand your anatomy well, and you're somebody who has a photographic memory where you perfectly can recall everything, you'll excel at the say like beautifully. Step exams a little bit different, and I believe they do that just to avoid, any people recalling questions or sharing questions, and to make it more, a real reflection of how the student is, not somebody who might have, had 10 friends that just took it last week and they could share all the information with them. So it's the bigger beast, and I'd say it's less of memorization, but more of timing. When you have a 12-sentence paragraph and 7 answer choices, trying to get that under 90 seconds and realistically under 70 seconds is quite a challenge. So you learn to read extremely fast. If you are not a good reader, like I wasn't, I was a terrible reader. You got to get good at reading, get good at fast reading, being able to, highlight good points. And then at that point, it's on you. Is your fundamental knowledge there to figure out what the answer choice is? And that's how you approach it. But it's a totally different beast from the MCAT. It's a 8-hour exam for the step and a 9-hour exam for the say. I'm not sure why the DOs added an extra 100 questions and made the time per question less, but you know, um, I guess I'm fortunate enough to be able to succeed at both. But it's uh it's a really daunting task for a lot of med students. But again, it comes back to the basics of, you know, are you doing questions every day? Yes. Okay. Where's my content need to be revised here? And following your fundamentals. But yeah, they're two different beasts. And for any pre-med students, I hope you just, you know, get rid of what I just said, because you need to focus on, your own discipline in your life and enjoying your life. I think enjoying an experience outside of your professional field grows you as a human being a lot. If you decide to take a trip with your friends or do activity with your friends, those are learning experiences just as much as what you're doing in your biochem class.
Yeah, the only thing is you can't put that on your application.
Yeah, unfortunately. However, it will show in your interviews. It'll show in your interviews in the sense that, you know how to talk to people, you enjoy your life, you have seen maybe parts of the world. I remember a physician once told me when I was just about 19 years old, he said, one of the best and most efficient ways to learn in this world is to travel. When you travel, you learn more than any textbook, any reading, any class. It's at another pace because you're exposed to an environment you've never been in before. You're trying to grasp on that environment and you're absorbing everything that's around you. I for all pre-med students, especially before medical school, or if you have already done your MCAT and you need a break, you know, go on a trip, around the world somewhere if you're able to do it. If not, visit some other states. I think it's one of the best learning experiences that you can get as a pre-med student for sure.
Yeah, and that helps with like your people skills, If you're out in a completely foreign environment, you got to talk to people to figure out where you need to go or what's good around here or things like that. And you know, like in medicine, the whole interaction is I'm just the doctor and the patient. The doctor's trying to get information from the patient, and the patient is trying to get information from the doctor. So that's actually a really good point that I never really thought about before. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another really good point. You got to remember physicians, like, what do we do end of the day? If you had to like really like narrow it down to what our true talent is, right? Think of physicians' true talent, maybe aside from surgeons more of hand-eye coordination, but
Mm,
most physicians, you're what really makes you an amazing physician is your detective work. How well are you able to figure out what's truly going on with the patient in front of you, with minimal time, with minimal interaction, and with minimal actions physically. So it's that real detective work, and I've never made that comparison myself with travel. I think that's an amazing point. Where if you can figure that out in a foreign environment where you don't even know the language, it comes a lot easier when you have a patient in front of you and you have 10-15 minutes to figure out what's going on with this person. So
yeah.
I think that's a great point.
Or even when the patient doesn't speak the language, and then you got to deal with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just like when you're in a foreign country, you don't speak the language and you're like, where's the coffee shop? Maybe you'll do hand gestures, maybe you'll do like something like that. It's physical. It's more of a physical communication. Just like with your patient who doesn't speak your language, your physical exam kind of takes over the questions you'd normally ask, and the human body will tell you what's going on with it.
Yeah. Or we just run and find the translator, but you know. Yeah, so I want to pivot back towards like how like kind of the discipline. So if you're a pre-med, and this is kind of like when I was entering college, during my kind of high school and secondary school career, I didn't have to study that much. It was really easy for me. And then I got into or I went to community college, and it was totally different for me because I like it was like I granted I didn't do my senior year in high school, so I didn't have that extra um, buffer. But what is the best way for someone who's either entering undergrad or entering medical school or entering university from community college? What is the one way you would advise them to learn how to study?
I think that's an excellent point. I'll give you two examples in my life. One was entering undergrad as a freshman. And my first semester was when I got my first B's and my first C. I have a C on my record. A lot of people think that's the end all be all. You're not going to get into medical school, you have a C, but it's really not. Um, so that was my initial take on freshman year. I had a really tough time where it's kind of like you're jumping on a rocking boat and you're trying to get your footing. You just need to get your footing. You need to get the balance right. Nobody's used to what's going on around them. You need to be able to adapt. So I think that transition of, stepping up to the plate, being able to adapt really sets you apart, from the rest of your class and from the rest of medical school applicants. Now, transition towards entering medical school. Same situation. I was terrible my first semester of medical school. And, to be fair, the first 2 weeks of medical school, we covered more than all of my undergrad. It literally was daunting to me seeing 1,500 to 2,000 PowerPoint slides full of content, new words that I've never heard on every single page, and having to know all that for a test that's 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out. It was daunting. And I wasn't succeeding. You know, there's something called remediation in medical school where if you don't get above a 70% or a passing grade, you have to take another test. And if you don't pass that, then you have to repeat the year. And they make the second one obviously more difficult, etc. But I had to remediate two of my tests. I got a 69.4 on one, which was awful because point 0.5 they push you over. And I think I got a low 69 on the other one. And, those remediations really taught me how to adapt. They really kind of threw me overboard and told me I need to get back on my feet. I need to figure out how to, fix my style. And luckily, I started exceeding above average in my class from there on out. Ever since then, I've been close to, the top quartile of my class of, you know, being able to succeed, being above average on tests. But no one starts there. Not a single person starts there. And I really, really think what makes the difference for those people who, are like myself, where you're not succeeding at the start, you're not grasping, is adapting. And I think what comes with that, to be more specific on what adapting means, is trying new things. If this week you're trying, flashcard systems, whether it's Anki or whatever app you're using to do flashcards, and that's not working for you, you need to try something else. Yeah, go talk to your class, see, hey, what are you doing to study? What are you doing to study? But nobody's way of studying is going to be exactly what works for you. You're going to find your own way, but you got to get creative. You got to get creative in, okay, is it going to be, am I going to be just reading the book over and over? Am I going to be just going through PowerPoint slides? Am I going to be just control F, looking for certain material? Once you find your style, you can succeed. But I tell every single first year medical student this. I say, look at the way you're studying right now, and in a year from now, I promise you it's going to be completely different. And every single second year that I had this conversation with a year prior, they're like, yeah, I tried 4 different styles and I finally got it and I'm finally succeeding. So that adaptation comes with, getting creative, trying new things. And again, don't do what everyone else is doing. If everyone else is saying this works for them, go ahead and give it a shot. But if it doesn't work for you, it's not end all be all. Getting creative is really, really important in those situations where, you just imagine, like, you have 2,000 PowerPoint slides. You took a test and you didn't do as great as you want, and bam, the next Monday after that Friday's test, you're back on the content, And some medical schools, to be fair, I think UCLA, David Geffen, they give you a 1 week period prior to your test to just review content. No new content. It's just a review week, then your test. Unfortunately, my school's not like that. They give us a 2 month summer break. So because of that, they got to squeeze the information into the time period we have. So because it was like you have new content on the Thursday before the Friday test, it was really kind of insane. So again, getting used to that is going to really make you succeed, and being able to adapt to adverse environments really, really makes a world of a difference.
Yeah. And one of the important things in that trial and error process is to not be discouraged when, okay, I tried this thing for like a whole month and it wasn't working. Okay. You got to know, just throw it out and try it again. That's because I sometimes have a hard time doing that. So for me, that's kind of would be a very big obstacle is, like I put all this effort into trying this new thing and it just didn't work out, but you got to do it again. So that's also an important thing that for trying out new styles and things like that. So yeah, I want to talk about how your classes are structured in medical school. So walk me through, let's say for the preclinical years, walk me through your entire day from sun up to sundown.
Yeah, and most medical schools kind of adopted what my school does, where, since COVID, since a lot of lectures have gone to the online format, it's not as much in-person time. But let me just start from this, from general structure. Your first year at almost every medical school, you're going to have anatomy and a cadaver lab, as well as your curriculum. That's what the first year is typically why it's daunting for most medical students, because you have all these muscles, all these muscular insertions, all their innervations, all their arterial supplies, all their venous drainages, and all the bones and all their ligaments, kind of, you have to know them all by spelling. And then you get this section on a cadaver with everything else covered, and they point to something and say, Not even what is it, but what's the innervation of it, or what's the arterial supply for it. So anatomy is really the daunting thing for most first year medical students. But how my day would look like would be, you know, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., you have your first lecture, whether that's, in the Zoom format or whether that's in person. After that, you have a couple more lectures every hour until just about midday. And then we had something at our school called Clinical Reasoning and Medicine, CMNR. CMNR was, something that most medical schools have their own version of, where it's like, how do you use your stethoscope? How do you see physical signs on an individual? What Sorry there. Yeah, I lost connection. I saw that.
Yeah.
Where did I leave off at?
How do you use your stethoscope? How do you see physical signs? Yeah.
Right. So the way the medical schools typically do it is you have a current block you're in, which is typically 4 to 6 weeks. It's typically system based. So maybe this block is just biochem, or this block is just the respiratory system, or just the renal system. And you learn the anatomy of it. I think for the first year they focus more on like, MSK. Um, what else was there? There's a few like major systems, cardio, respiratory, extremities, derm. And when you learn these blocks, you have to learn every single thing about it. Mostly it's physiology for your first year. So these lectures are physio based, and you have your clinical reasoning and medicine class to show you how to apply them in medicine. And those classes, they want you to wear your white coat, be all professional, try to do everything properly. And that ends at around like 2, 3 o'clock in the day. Then you have your anatomy lab. You go in, you do your dissections, and sometimes they switch off the days, whether this day is more clinical reasoning based, maybe this one's more anatomy based, but that's your interval. And it's usually they try to make it structure where it's 9 to 5. That's how it used to be. Now, because things are more, on the Zoom online virtual realm, they like putting a lot of lectures, after the end of your day, after you've been at school for, 7, 8 hours, here's 2, 3 other hour lectures that you have to watch as well that were pre-recorded or on Zoom. Now, something that, a little unorthodox, some physicians or, our PhD professors would be maybe a little upset about is, how I approach those online lectures. I would rarely attend them unless I was really, really lacking in the content. Rarely attend them. And because I had so much experience in undergrad of listening to audiobooks at, first 1.25x, 1.5x, 2x, 2.5x, the Zooms I was able to, before the rest of my class, listen to it at like 1.5, 2 times speed and absorb the knowledge really well. So, that's not always the best advice for somebody who's not used to that, especially if you're not picking up the key points. But, listening to those lectures, getting through the day, but after the end of your day, now you've gone through your 8 to 10 hours of school new material. Now, what do you do with the rest of your day? You review what was the previous day, the day before that, or the week before that. And you're spending between, 12 and 16 hours every single day, sometimes including weekends, to this content. There's no other way around it. A lot of people, when I tell them, hey, you're going to be having 12, 16-hour days every single day, you're going to be studying 6 to 10 hours on the side every single day. They kind of are like, okay, come on, like, what is this guy saying? I was really a good pre-med, I everything came easy to me, but it's impossible in medicine, even for your board exams, it's impossible to know every single thing. So you just have to be good at identifying where you're weak at. That's really what makes a difference between a good and bad medical student. Is the good medical student can identify their weaknesses, while a bad medical student just can't for the life of him identify where they're weak at. So identification of where you're weak at. But yeah, it's a crazy schedule. you'll burn out really fast. You know, I tell a lot of medical students they have, you know, days where, you know, oh, this Saturday I'm gonna spend 12 to 16 hours. I'm gonna get through these portions of my block and review them. And then come Saturday, they wake up, they scroll on reels in their bed, they watch a movie, they end up like eventually taking a shower, then they don't do anything the whole day, right? And there's two ways to approach that. One, you could look at that and be like, the whole day, I'm such a lazy, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm such a lazy person. And, you know, shame on me. I'm going to fall behind. I'm going to fail. What's wrong with me? And then finally, come Sunday, the day after, they are feeling guilty still about that time they spent off. That's absolutely the wrong way to approach it. You got to listen to your body. When your body cannot study, you listen to it, you enjoy it. You know, it sucks, you had a plan, but who cares? If you feel guilty, it's the worst feeling ever. You should never have the word guilty shouldn't be in medical students' vocabulary. And you should listen to your body, because come the next day, if you listen to your body properly, you will be at 100%. You will be able to absorb content better, learn better. So when you have those unexpected days that you were planning on studying and it doesn't happen, enjoy it. You know, don't feel guilty. Don't tell yourself, you know, the whole day, wow, I feel so bad, because then you're not even getting full relaxation. You're just like criticizing and condemning yourself for no reason at all. So um, burnout days exist. They happen all the time. So got to listen to your body when that happens. Other than that, yeah, it's pretty intense. You know, set 5 days a week. You know, you're doing 12 hours, or not 12 hours. You're doing 10 hours of new content, and then the rest of your time it's reviewing that new content. When eventually you have, you know, a 200 question test that's, like I said, you know, 6 to 8 answer multiple choice, it gets tricky. But again, everyone either lives up to it or unfortunately doesn't. You know, that's another reality of medical school. You know, a lot of people do drop their first year or remediate their first year. So it's a part of the process. But again, if you learned in your undergrad years how to adapt, how to get used to it, how to be disciplined as a professional student, you can overcome it for sure.
Yeah. Um, that was very brutal, and I thank you for that, because a lot of people don't, they go into medical school with the image of, like, like these Instagram med influencers, where it's just like, oh, like they're in their nice little desk, they got like two monitors, or like it looks very kind of glamorous, I guess, but it, as you said, really just isn't. It's a lot of being in the trenches, just like trying to wallow in it.
Yeah, it's quite terrible. You get used to it, you know, even though first year is about like half as easy as second year, and second year is half as easy as third year. You really get used to it. It stops feeling terrible and it starts feeling pretty good. But again, where you study will completely change. How you study, what you used to study, what kind of monitor you're using, what kind of devices you have, everything will change starting, you know, from your first semester to your second year. So getting really creative during that period. I remember I got like my first year, I had a couple friends in my medical school, and they all made fun of me for like a laptop stand I got just to keep my laptop at eye level. And I got, like one of these little like, Bluetooth mouses for my laptop. Every single one of them made fun of me. They're like, "What are you doing? You're like a nerd." I'm like, "Look, we're all nerds." Um, and it's like they all made fun of me, but come second year, every single one of them has a laptop stand, and every single one of them has a mouse. I don't know where I got the creative idea from, but in my head, I was just thinking, you know, where can, the financial, you know, fortunate financial situation that I have that I've created for myself be of benefit in medical school? And I literally just started buying all the random little useful devices you can get. I have, I think here, let me grab one
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, so I carry these even around in my backpack, and I'll hold it up to the monitor just so you could see.
Mhm.
That's a USB-C port, and on the back of it is a Lightning port. Now I have four different types of this. I have the regular USB to USB-C, USB to Lightning, all in my back. Random little things like this save you so much time and give you such peace of mind when you feel so overwhelmed that, again, if you don't have that like financial situation like I had, I would highly recommend to all medical students, you're able to pull on your FAFSA extra money, pull the max amount, don't worry about it, put it in a savings account. And if you need it, if you think of these random little things, they'll be incredibly useful. So that's my biggest take on that part.
Yeah. And you mentioned previously about burnout and like, you have a day where you're supposed to do stuff but didn't pan out. What's the balance between having a planned rest day versus having one of those unplanned rest days?
Sometimes you'll have a planned rest day and you need those, right? And you just feel like restless and you want to do something. And you can, that's always, beneficial. If you think of something in the middle of, you know, exercise or being with your friends and you're like, oh, what about, how I can't remember what's the negative pressure of like the inner pleural space between the thoracic cavity and the lung wall, right? And you just don't remember that and you look it up, that's totally fine. Like that's natural. But on your burnout days, you don't plan, you literally don't look up anything. You'll feel like your body will do the stupidest and dumbest things. And I found that out really fast. And speaking to other medical students, speaking to cousins, speaking to people who are CEOs, CFOs, I've noticed like the more high intensity your work or your professional life is, the more stupid your relaxation time is. I know a CEO that, watches Jersey Shore on his like off days, like the stupidest of this. And I found myself watching not Jersey Shore, but just as stupid, content. And, having those, outlets will make a world of a difference because your mind can't be on this all day 24/7. And the reality of it is when you are practicing as a physician eventually, you are not going to be, only doing medicine your whole life. End of the day, it's just a career. You got to find things that you enjoy outside of your career, whether that's your family, whether that's a hobby, whether it's exercise. You've got to find it. So finding that is just as important as being disciplined in your profession.
Yeah. And even as a physician, we have massive rates of burnout. So doing that and being cognizant of it while you're in medical school will just improve your life like a lot, because who wants to be like a general surgeon who's always going, like who comes in at 6 a.m. and leaves at like 8 p.m. and just doing all this stuff nonstop. And you're right, it'll reach them eventually and they're just going to have to kind of lay back on it. Yeah. So, just be aware of it, I guess. Now talk about day sun up, sundown as in the clinical rotations as a third year med student.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, it's more on your own. So no longer do you have X amount of content with X PowerPoints to go through for your test. You now have a shelf exam, or for DOs, ComSci, which is, 150 to 200 question, board style exam that you have at the end of the month with every single specialty you have to rotate through, because you have your core disciplines you have to rotate through. So it just depends on the clinic. Some clinics will, keep you 8 to 10 hours every day, 5 days of the week, sometimes more. And, you got to come home on the days that you still have energy and be doing your practice problems, be studying for that board exam. So it's kind of on your own. There's no content really given to you from your school, very minimal content given to you from your school for how to study for these things. So it's really on your own. Third year becomes, are you on your own or are you not? And, the students that really succeed in third year on clinical rotations in general, because some medical schools start clinicals in their second year. So the people who really succeed are those that were kind of independent in their first year and second years. If you were the person that, didn't really follow everyone else's way, kind of did things on your own and manage your time on your own without using somebody else's formula, you succeed in your third year a lot better. But again, it comes back to a balance where, you know, I'm personally, I try to spend, anywhere between 3 to 6 hours extra on the days I'm working, and on my off days, minimum 8 up to 12 hours of studying content review, whether that's New World, any other question banks, just doing question banks, getting prepped for that. But it's working in the clinic, while you're in the clinic, looking up where, you need to learn, where you need to improve, maybe review the things on your own. And then, hey, let's say I'm in an internal medicine rotation. I need to be doing my internal medicine questions, getting prepped for this board exam. So it's a little bit different. Also, third year includes, applications towards residencies, starting to do audition rotations, a lot of, extra paperwork and personal statements and all this other stuff that seems daunting. But again, it comes back to that, you know, giving yourself the proper breaks, giving yourself the proper everything else. And the real reality of it is, once you do succeed at all that professional stuff, you'll notice the difficult stuff isn't really the professional. It's the personal life stuff, whether it's your family, your friends. You know, sometimes you'll have situations where it's like, you know, personally for me, like, my med school feels almost easy at this point compared to, the situations I have to deal, unfortunately, with my family's health, where it's a weird give and take, right? So you got to find that balance again. But third year is much more enjoyable just because you do get hands-on experience. You sometimes have the opportunity in clinics where the physician that's working, or is you're attending, or your preceptor, will let you practice like they do: treat, prescribe, diagnose, send the patient home, right? So it feels much more rewarding. But to be fair, there are, again, clinics where you'll do nothing. You can just stand and watch, and that's it, period. So it really just depends. I think, it really depends on where you go to school too. Some of the bigger academic centers like UCLA, Loma Linda, USC, they like doing clinical rotations within their own facilities. Very rarely do they branch out them with the partner, hospitals. Unfortunately, they don't get really the variability of, you could do everything on your own, because a lot of times at these academic centers that have residencies, there's a real important chain of command where, it's the senior resident that, tells you if you can or can't do something. Then it's the second or third year resident. Then it's the intern. Then it's you. And if you don't follow that chain of command, and, you say, hey, let's treat this patient like this, I'm putting in these orders, or, I want to do this, it's seen as very taboo. And unfortunately, these academic centers, I don't think they get a full exposure to be, independent. However, the nice part about their path is they're not filling out, registration and packets for these hospitals and signing clearance forms for about 5 to 10 hours every single month for the following rotation. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. I was about to ask about that, of like the difference between rotating at like an academic center versus at like a community center, but you very graciously answer that for me. So what advice would you give to someone who just got into medical school, right? They're all excited that they're about to go in. What would you tell them?
I've told this to a couple people already, a couple friends. So I know exactly what I would say. If you got into medical school, congratulations. You're going to be starting in a few months. The first question they ask me is, how do I prep for it? You don't. You can't prep for it. There's no way to understand what is going to be hitting you in a few months. So the best thing you can do is not prep. I don't recommend prepping. Go travel the world, go live your life, go do everything you wanted to do in your life that you could think of. If you have a bucket list, go fill out that bucket list, because that is the best thing you could do for yourself and will give you the energy to succeed in your first and second years. If you try to spend the time of, oh, let me prep, let me take this course, and let me study my anatomy, you're never gonna succeed, because again, the level at which and the caliber at which they expect you to learn is near impossible. It's near impossible, and it's purposely near impossible. That's why almost every medical school, they don't grade on a they don't grade their block exams on a point to point basis. It's always on a curve. And in most medical schools, it's a pass fail, just a pass fail. There's no A, B, C. Unfortunately, my school has an honors, high pass, and a pass. So it adds, unnecessary competition and, not necessarily best professional practice between peers. However, that being said, almost every medical school is pass fail. So it's something that, you need to get used to, but not now. If you just got into medical school, go travel the world. Go enjoy your life. Go check off every bucket list. You want to see these cousins. You want to go do this activity that you've never done. Go do it. That should be your priority.
Yeah. Just yeah, especially because you got to buckle down. Yeah. Even for me, like I understood that during medical school, it was just going to be like nonstop, right? So for me, I kind of chose to do like a major that I thought is interesting. I want to learn about it before I have to dive deep into medical school and just all these hard sciences. So even like doing those little things could I think would probably help out a lot in just kind of seeing your enjoyment of the world and opening your mind into other disciplines and greater things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always make the joke that we have at our school a Harvard graduate, but of philosophy. What that has to do with medicine, I have no clue. So, you know, doesn't matter what your undergrad degree is, as long as you can succeed at an MCAT. And don't get me wrong, a biology degree will help you succeed at an MCAT. However, that being said, uh, you want to branch out into a major that you enjoy. I think that's much more useful than doing a bio major. You could do an architecture major and then just study really well for the MCAT and learn your MCAT information really well and be just as good or a better medical student than your peers.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is even in architecture is a notoriously very difficult degree. So that will just give you that discipline that we were talking about. If you have to study all the time, like I don't know what you study in architecture, like oh how this structure is held up or things like that. I don't know. But
Absolutely.
yeah. So kind of going into more personal questions. Like what have you enjoyed the most about medical school?
Ooh, I think, God, there's a few things popping up in my mind. Okay, if we let's start, just in basic categories. Subject wise, I'll go subject, system, and then, practice. So, subject wise, every medical student listening to this is going to hate me. I loved pharmacology. Pharmacology was my favorite. Don't get me wrong, we learned like six to 700 generic drugs. All of them you have to learn their spelling, what their use is, what their off-label use is, what their side effects are, what their antidote is, what their drug-drug interactions are, what their side I think I said side effects already.
We can
But
do
you have there's like endless amount of information that you have to learn, and it's not just one side effect. It's about five side effects. There's not one drug-drug interaction. There's about five. There's not just one use. There's multiple uses. And then you have to learn the mechanism of action on the end of it. But to me, in my second year when we first started learning pharmacology, that was really the first exposure of learning something that's really applicable into the field of medicine. I felt like learning physiology again didn't feel like really gratifying. Learning biochem definitely didn't. Anatomy, you get a little bit of, oh, cool, that's the human body. But pharmacology felt like the first dose of like real medicine to me. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that's working in my favor just because in clinic, really need pharmacology, but I love pharmacology. Most medical students are going to hate me for that. But moving on, system wise, what was my favorite system? I would say cardio was my favorite system by far. Cardio is just one of those systems that if you can understand it kind of conceptually, kind of like organic chemistry, if you can understand it visually and conceptually, you don't really need to memorize the pathophysiology of it. You don't need to know this is why heart failure happens and this that. If you can understand, oh, this is how it works. Okay, I can see if this part goes down, this is what we're going to have as a disease. You'll understand it a lot better, and it's very conceptual rather than the memorization that you'll have for like renal or especially neuro. God, neuro's awful. Um, but yeah, cardio is easily my favorite subject. System. So subject would be pharmacology, system would be cardio, and then clinic wise, I'm really torn. I loved surgery. It was really really fun. But I can see how it can be kind of monotonous at a certain point. Don't get me wrong, everyone's anatomy is different. Even if you're doing the same gallbladder surgery or cholecystectomy on everybody, it's going to be different every time. But it's very, very enjoyable. It's fun working with your hands. It's fun scrubbing in. It's fun, seeing what human anatomy looks like on a real live patient. And it's very enjoyable. However, that being said, easily emergency medicine is hands down my favorite. Um, the chaos of it and the unexpectedness of you can have somebody that's 3 weeks old to 103-year-old is so broad of a range of pathophysiologies and disease states and conditions that you can see that in that moment you need to make a critical decision that's either going to save this person or not. And if you don't make the right decision, sometimes you can end up killing your patient. It's the sheer amount of chaos and high level intensity that really brings me a lot of joy. I think that kind of tracks back to me as a juvenile. I was always kind of like an adrenaline junkie, and emergency medicine feels like that too at a lot of points, and it's really, really, really enjoyable because you are saving people in that moment in time, and it feels very gratifying. It's always stimulating. That's one thing I tell a lot of people when they're trying to figure out specialties is find something that stimulates you. If you looking at a heart every single day and seeing it with an echo and seeing how the heart works and functions and seeing different ways of it, or you know putting in a stent into a blocked coronary artery is something that you know will pique your interest for the next 40 years of your life. By all means do it. For me, I need something different. I need something that's gonna challenge me every single day, whether I'm 25 years old like I am now or whether I'm 65 years old. I want to be mentally challenged and stimulated all the time. So definitely as far as clinic, emergency medicine. So just to trace back, it would be pharmacology, cardio as a system, and emergency medicine as a clinic, specialty.
Yeah. Have you ever rotated at like a trauma center? Because I know when I met you, we're at a community hospital. So um, it's not, the acuity is not as high as if we were in a like trauma center.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do have one coming up. Looking very forward to it. And I was so shocked at the community center that we met at that there were so many codes as there were. We were getting a handful of codes every day, which was surprising to me. I wouldn't expect that at a community center. But, you know, and the sheer volume was pretty high at some points. That being said, a trauma center is the things I'm saying I enjoy on another level, on a radically new level, because you have an OR that is on standby for patients that come in, and you'll see anything and everything. And it's really, really like I'm giddy talking about it. So I am very much looking forward to that.
Yeah. Me too. Um, yeah, I'm personally, having been at that hospital for as long as I have, I've never seen somebody code, which is interesting that you're saying that you saw a lot of them because I haven't seen any. So
Hmm.
yeah, maybe Maybe you just bring it to you, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, codes are, different in nature. You're not always going to have your full blown like code blue, right? But you'll have different types of codes, whether that's, somebody that's requiring, an intubation, cardiac compressions, um, it really varies. But yeah, we never really had your code blues, to be fair, but we did have people coming in, where their heart isn't functioning. They need to be intubated, you can't feel a pulse on them and their extremities are cold. So again, I would not expect that coming into a community center at all. So it was very fun, to say the least. It was very, very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a good one. Okay, so now my last question is to the pre-med right now
Mhm.
who is kind of lost. What would you say to them to help them get them back on track?
You know, I don't necessarily think it's getting back on track. Sometimes for pre-meds, again, if you do not have a mentor, if you haven't seen the medical field, go see it. Because realistically, why I went into medicine in the first place was, the two things I said, caring for others and real intrigue of the human body. Realistically, you don't need to be a physician to do that. You can achieve not the same amount, but close to the same amount being an NP or a PA. And you will 100% be able to care for more individuals quicker in your life and do much more in your life doing those things. So I recommend to a lot of people that, especially, that don't know what they want in life to explore those options first. I don't think there's anything negative about them. And when I look back at it and say, why didn't I pursue those? I'd say it's my ego. When I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and I was saying, what can I do? My head, when I heard NP and PA, I always thought, I'm better than that. I'm so much better than that. But really, they play a huge role. They care for a lot of people, and you can be independently learning after your degree for the amount of time that I'm still in school while still helping others, while being financially more stable. It it makes sense for a lot of people, So I'd recommend that number one for the pre-med that, feels lost, go explore those other routes. You're not better than it. Nobody is better than it. They are experts in their own nature. So go explore those. For the person that has explored those, knows what that is, and still is saying, I'm going to be a physician, and you're off track, you know, take a week or two, go see what else you like in your life. Go find those other things. Once you find those other things, whether it's, camping, exercise, enjoying time with your friends, playing video games, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. See, does your heart still draw you back to this thing? Um, do you still feel like this is what is your calling? This is your destiny. And if you feel those two things still, reach out, find mentors, find medical students, find physicians, and tell them your situation. Tell them, hey, I feel like I need guidance, and somebody will help you. Somebody will answer that call and help you. So finding that is really the biggest difference in your life. I feel very, very blessed that I've been able to do that for a lot of medical students. And, I tell all of them, they always tell me, but you're so busy. How do you have, I tell them my phone's always available. Call me if you need anything. And I've had just this year, like six first years that called me, three of them crying on the phone, and the other three, sounding extremely panicked because of the situation they're in. And, for pre-med students, I see that same panic. And, it's important to see clarity of like the reality of your situation, and I'm really happy that I've been able to give that to some people. And for that lost pre-med, reach out, find somebody, any medical student, any physician, some of them are going to be more dismissive, and that's fine. You'll find another one. You'll find the right mentor. But if you don't have that, that will make the difference. That will keep you on track.
Yeah. Ask and you shall receive is kind of that. And my last point is when I was when I was younger, I was didn't really know what was going on or what I was going to do. And then my mom just told me, I remember she said, you will know when you find what you want to do. And I was like, you sure? Like, come on. Like that's just like that happens in movies and happen in real life. But I 100% agree with that. You will find it, and you will know when it's the right thing to do. So just keep looking, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just keep exploring. If you don't know what something is, if you don't know what a PA is, you don't know what an MP is, go look it up, go explore it before you decide to become a physician.
Yeah.
Because we need those people in the world and they play a significant role. If you know what a physician is and you know what all those other things are, keep exploring. But one thing I gotta say, every year that will pass by in this journey, whether you're a pre-med student, whether you're a med student, even if you're a resident or attending, you'll look back and be like, how ignorant was I the year prior?
Mhm.
And that should be your goal. Every year you should feel like you were so ignorant the year prior. So to all those pre-med students, don't worry, it's daunting and CAT sucks. Nobody likes it. It's awful. But don't let the person that, dug their head down and got through it, but they're an awful person, beat you to that medical school spot, because that's the reality of it. You'll have a lot of not good-hearted people getting into medical school because they are more disciplined than you. So get the discipline, learn the tactics, and get back on track. You'll be great.
Yeah. And I think that's just what most people need to hear and want to hear, and will help push them forward. So thank you so much, Philip, for your time. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. Yeah, just thank you.
Thank you, Elon. It was really my pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity you extended to me.
Yeah, of course, and yeah, I hope to see you soon. Hope you're. I think you told me you're doing a family medicine rotation right now. I hope that's going
That's
okay.
correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll see you soon, Philip. Thank you so much.
Take care, Elon.
All right, see ya. Bye bye.